Good afternoon, dear friends. We begin the second session under the Marathon of Capitals. I would like to remind you that we travel around the world during this session. This morning, we made a stop in Asia and in Africa. We met with the Russian trade representatives of and heads of different industrial associations and companies. And now we travel to Europe, where we have a lot of trade partners. The moderators for this session today will be Suren Vardanyan, Moscow Chamber of Trade and Commerce, and in our studio in sunny Ekaterinburg, we have Andrei Besedin, the president of the Urals Chamber of Trade and Commerce. I'm happy to welcome everyone. Colleagues, good afternoon to everyone. And the first one, we will have the studio in Berlin, our trade representative of Russia in Germany, Andrei Sobolev. I would like to welcome you, and I would like to welcome you as a person who was at the very beginning of the main industrial exhibition in Russia. So good afternoon, dear friends. I will try to be in the same mode that you've already set up. So, Mr. Besedin, the floor to you. With great pleasure, I would like to take the floor. And once again, I would like to say that this is a kind of a specific thing of in a prom when the audience, when you can talk, when you can say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the audience, because in Ekaterinburg, in the place where the INAPROM traditionally takes place in its standard format, we have evening already. As for our Moscow studio, we have the daytime, and the European part has beginning of the day. And as for the participants who will represent the Latin American continent, they have early morning, and that is why I am happy to welcome you. I am happy to welcome the Federal Republic of Germany, and personally Andrei Sobolev and his guests, who I know very well. And so I cannot but express my emotions and share my emotions. It's another thing that I'm used to. You know, we've been together for 10 years, shoulder to shoulder, here in Ekaterinburg, and we've been experiencing the atmosphere, the good emotional atmosphere that we had here in Ekaterinburg, and physical load of the large scale event with a large number of different platforms, simultaneous sessions, negotiations, B2B meetings. And today we are at a distance. We go through borders, we go through time zones, but we are together. I'm happy to see you. And the first thing I would like to do is to introduce the guests. I know this guest, but maybe not everyone who is attending our event today knows this guest. And after the introduction, I will have the question to you. We've decided to ask this question as the start question to all the speakers in the first part of our session today. And the question is how this complex situation with the impact from pandemic, the economic impact, how it affected Germany, and was Germany able to contradict something to this pandemic? This is just a very brief and quick question, because later on I will have individual questions to you and to your guests in the same direction. So I would like to give the floor to you. So our studio in Berlin says hello to our guests in Ekaterinburg. I would like to address our words to the organizers, to listeners, to guests. I would like to introduce Markus Jäger, the head of the Federal Association of the Small and Medium Size Enterprises, which includes the participants from two industrial unions. It's about 200 participants from Germany. I would like just to remind you that Germany is mainly based on small and medium-sized businesses, and it includes about millions of companies, and about 95% would be the small and medium-sized businesses. And you can understand what kind of feelings I have at the moment when I sit next to such an important person from German economy. And On my right hand, you see Alexander Rar, who is acting in many places. And today he is not the international journalist and he is not the head of the Russian-German Forum, but he represents the Russian Economy Council in Germany. And I would like to answer to your question. I think it will not be very much different from what you've already heard in Asia. I think that lockdown for Germany was not an exception. It's the tremendous reduction of demand, and we saw that in April we faced the peak probably of crisis in Germany. The industrial production went down by 30%. Next to this, we saw the reduction of our turnover by 11%. We felt this reduction, uh, but we do not see any kind of dramatic things that we cannot stop. The structure of our external trade remained the same. It's similar to what we had had before. Of course, we consider the decrease in our turnover, but the researchers say that e- economy in Germany recovers rather rapidly, and in the second half of the year, we expect that our external turnover will grow through those channels that we have already adjusted. Speaking about the bilateral trade, I would say that it's important to say, especially if we address to our industrialists, I would say that both in our country and in Germany, special package of anti-crisis measures was undertaken and adopted. And those measures that were undertaken in Germany are different from those measures that you will see in German economy in future. And probably one of the most distinctive features would be application of the so-called package of the future that costs 50 billion euros. And it considers further development of German economy on new innovative rails. So hence they're speaking about the renewable energy sources, about new materials to be applied, about quantum technologies, about new efficient mobile traffic infrastructure. So we cannot avoid any kind of electrical mobility. And it's really symbolic that in Russia, the discussions are in progress and some decisions are being taken in terms of development of industry on the new technical basis. And we have very similar features with Germany. And it's also symbolic that 2020 and 2021 will be the years of cross economies and substantial development in Russia and in Germany. And this will be an addition to the profound infrastructure that have already been developed and established between Russia and Germany. And this cooperation will be mutual and profitable, and it will give the possibility for strengthening the economic industrial relations. And probably I will end up with this, and I will give the floor to my guests and the opportunity to my guests to speak. Thank you, Mr. Sobolev, but I will not let you go before you pass the floor to our honored guests of the Urals German dialogue. I will just try to get deeper into details. I will ask you that, speaking of one of our recent discussions that we had with participation of Russian business, there was a sentence pronounced that this situation affected the steelmaking industry in Germany. And once I'm really for the Urals and I support the Urals, and you understand how important it is for us, because the remaining part of our export is mainly based on metallurgical products. I do remember that there was information that the experts of the German Economic Union expressed the idea to reconsider and change the protective measures of European Union for the steelmaking industry. This cannot but concern. This is the matter for concern for us. But I know that our partners are interested in this, and those who are in the audience are interested in this. Thank you. It's an important question, not only for the Urals, but for the Russian and German trade and economic relations, protectionism, growth of protectionism, of course, is the part of any kind of crisis, and the current crisis will not be an exception. So the voices about closing borders, limitation of supplies, renationalization of industrial companies, need to stiffen the requirements to foreign investors are pronounced in Germany, but uh, for the sake of German business, we would say that such opinion is not domaining, and those decisions that are being taken, at least in Brussels, are not very dramatic. And it will not be kind of locking the German and European market for the Russian steel manufacturers. Though this situation in metallurgy and metal processing was, of course, affected by this lockdown, the demand went down, and that April, when we had the crisis peak, the production of steel went down by 1/4. You understand that the country that depends on steel production felt the effect, experienced this effect, and those voices that were in favor of locking the market were not listened to. And from July the 1st, the European Commission considered the new quotes, and nothing was changed in terms of reduction of these quotes. Just the procedure for the Russian Federation was changed. The Russian Federation can supply products, including steel products, based on the main procedure, and we consider that, speaking of those processes that are associated in improvement and environment-friendly production that are being implemented in all Russian companies, we think that the Russian products, including steel products, ferrous metals, will be in demand in the German market. And together with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, the trade representation is controlling the situation, and we are in close contact with the European and Russian manufacturers, and we think that the situation will get stable in the nearest time. Thank you very much. And so first of all, let me interrupt you. I would just like to apologize, but we have Alexei Gruziev, the Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation, and he is not able to spend the whole session with us because he has a very tough day today, and he already expressed that he had to shift some meetings, and we are really grateful for him for this. And we think we have a very interesting exchange of opinions between the heads of the Chamber of Commerce and the Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade, who is responsible for trade. And I think it's really a very good chance for the heads of the Chamber of Commerce and Trade to ask interesting questions, and a chance for Alexei Gruziev to answer these questions. So Suren Vardanyan will ask his question, and Mr. Besedin will ask his question. Thank you very much for joining our session, for returning here. I wouldn't say that these are very acute questions, but this is one of the priorities we would like to raise for Minpромtorg, for the Ministry of Industry and Trade, for the Russian companies in terms of their approach to the external market. It's really great that I'm interfering the German session, because one of the major experiences that we've seen is the German experience of presence in external markets. This is the experience of the joint structures like the German and Russian chamber, the Switzerland and Russian chamber, French, British, which express themselves very well, which introduce themselves into the Russian market. They have the support of their countries, and they promote their business in the Russian Federation. I'm not trying to undermine the role of the Ministry of Industry and Trade or the Russian Expert Center. I would just like to propose the following thing, to use such joint structures that will go along with our initiative. And these initiatives are being developed in Switzerland and Germany. But unfortunately, now we do not have the required communication that our colleagues have. And maybe the Ministry of Industry and Trade will consider that such experience as exists everywhere in the world, in China and Indonesia, maybe this experience will be used for organizing such dedicated promotion of the Russian brand and Russian technologies and companies in the markets of other countries. Such joint structures or joint bodies, maybe the Ministry of Industry and Trade will be supportive of this initiative, and then these joint bodies will be efficient and will be working for increasing the efficiency. And I think it will be a very productive experience, and it will allow us to promote our products in the external market. What is your opinion about this? So, good afternoon, dear participants of the conference. I think that my appearance will not be considered that we're taking the advantage of being the officials in changing the turns in the discussion, but I would thank you very much for the question, and I will answer that. We look at the experience that our international colleagues have, Russian colleagues have, and the Chinese colleagues have, and European colleagues have in terms of promotion of the export products and business support. It's the government model, quasi-government model. It goes as the commercial model through different structures and agencies and unions. Every one of them has its positive and negative sides. And speaking of our situation, if we speak about the Russian situation, the consolidation of our efforts would be the main answer and the proper answer to say. And we should not but take into account every single channel for promotion of our capabilities, for partnership. And the only thing that we should avoid, as it has already been mentioned, is the internal competition. The internal competition will not result in positive effect in the market, and it will not work for the favor of our products, and it will just reduce the final benefit. As for the mechanism of the chambers of industry and trade, I think that we are coming close to this dialogue, and we are planning the event on this Friday, and we will have the online discussion of the current situation in trade, what main challenges we're facing, and what role the promotion institutes play in changing the situation and in adapting to the existing circumstances. We would like to invite all of the interesting parties to join this discussion. It will be the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, us, the Ministry of Economic Development. So we are ready for this dialogue. And as for the models, we should understand that what would be the role of every particular institution. If we're speaking about the German experience, the experience that the German entrepreneurs have, or if we speak about the China, they have their chamber of entrepreneurs. This would be the enormous number of people with the funding mechanisms and interactions. They have the membership fees, and they are able to invite the Chinese experts. They prepare different analytical information, and they arrange the events for which people pay, and this allows to promote the experts. If we're speaking about the trade representatives as the government model of support, we should all understand that the services that this institution provides are for free primarily. But here we should understand what would be more useful, whether the free service which you cannot openly promote, or the service that you cannot afford. This is the matter for discussion, and we take into consideration the best practices in terms of involvement of the government institutions. We're trying to make them as close to business as possible, but keeping them free. Probably this would be my brief answer. We are open for a dialogue. And speaking of the joint efforts, I would say that you've mentioned this morning that our ministry and the trade representatives are trying to share the level of expertise for the entrepreneurs and discuss the actions at international markets. I think we should continue this practice and different types of international events. And we think that we'll switch from online to offline, even though it's very conservative. I would say that such events will be accompanied with a large number of participants from chambers of industry and trade and commerce and from different unions, and we are ready to interact with you on these issues. Thank you very much. We will be very grateful if you understand, if you invite us for this Friday meeting. It will be interesting for us. Thank you once again for your colleagues to be so supportive in our events. Thank you. And Mr. Besedin, once again, good afternoon. So there are some key issues. In the very beginning, we're trying to smooth them down. However, I need to ask certain questions and to raise certain issues because this is the matter of concern not only for me being the moderator, but these issues are being raised at our international platforms, including at our negotiations with those countries who are present in our second session. And these issues are related to the following. We are not trying to hide anything as being the representatives of the Russian business. We see that the rules of the game are changing. The rules of the game in the international trade platforms, those rules that have been agreed by the participating countries long before, including the WTO, we see the new instruments that are being used. We would like to get something, we would like to get the benefits for our companies, but we see that our foreign partners are not ready to deliver some products that had been previously delivered to us, but with regard to the new economic conditions, but also some of the products that are being competitive in the market and are in demand in the foreign countries are being blocked by non-competitive instruments. As for competition, we always support the competition. Quality, price, other associated things. But nowadays, and this is what was discussed during the first session, we demonstrated the example. So far, here comes a very simple question. How Russia will behave in this situation? Are we going to be very philosophic? This is an option, and the time will show who was right. Or we will try to contradict something. We will try to build up our own rules and mechanisms and our own tactics in order not to waste our interests and the interests of our producers. Thank you for the question. Here I will be speaking about my personal feelings and my personal perception. Of course, traditionally, Russia was for the transparent rules of the game and for observance of these rules of the game, whether they were good or bad. But if we have the rules, we should follow the rules. That is why we were actively arguing for the legal basis of sanctions in 2014, and that is why we consider that, speaking from the point of view of competition, we think that this is just the instrument of struggle in competition, and our recent negotiations just confirmed this fact that this wasn't fair. But speaking from the philosophical point of view, probably if we're too philosophic, we would be too naive. And we should probably follow the principle of transparency. Transparency in discussing the challenging issues and interacting and bringing to life the mechanisms that in order not to stay aside of the main competitive struggle. And we use the entire arsenal, the international diplomacy and economical diplomacy has. Those would be different committees and ambassadors' missions and trade representatives. They are the ones who are responsible for consultancy, for discussing the standpoint, and very often, I would say, results in a certain effect. And if the information is provided in a proper way, in a proper manner, and in proper time, results in positive effect and takes the complexities down. And without discovering disclosing the details, I would say that we hosted different events. We invited the key figures in the business. We invited the members of parliaments, representatives of business, and the business was asking to keep economy aside the politics, because this results in economic effect and economic benefits. And I think the combination of these factors will allow finally to keep and maintain our positions in the economic arena and move forward. And at that, we should also support the existing instruments and tools, no matter what kind of these instruments are. I'm going to speak about the WTO. We didn't have the procedures for even the temporary mechanisms will help us to regulate some controversial issues, and the arbitration mechanisms will certainly help us in moving forward, and we need to consolidate our efforts and to move forward. And I think that maybe imperfect rules are much better than the lack of the rules.
Thank you, Alexei. And we move to Berlin again. It's a great pleasure. We are waiting for you. It's a second attempt to connect our experts, our speakers from the studio in Germany. And my first question to them is, Alexander, I will start with you probably. I shall confess, I'm trying to monitor your speeches, your presentations, because I really like many things you say. It's because everything is clear and your position is absolutely transparent and you're very sincere. Yes, honestly, I read or listen a lot, and one of the interviewer included information that you noted the key direction, key area. I mean ecology, environmental protection, and I will quote you now that the ecology is the key subject for Germany and Europe, almost the principal topic. Germany and Europe will start changing business dramatically. The legislation, we understand that. But at the same time, the question is as follows. The program is very long term, is very important. It will take more than 1 year, and of course Russia is interested, and Russian manufacturers and designers of technologies, our science is interested in participating in this sphere, so our partnership could be as strong as in traditional industries. But there are some features, some specific features which we have discussed with Alexei. Could you please tell us, to your point of view, here we are partners. Is cooperation possible between Russia and Germany in this sphere, despite the fact that there were so comparisons with the ecological NATO, etc.? Are they partners or competitors? Thank you. Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Besedin. I will take part in the online conference with pleasure. I will speak about communication, answering your question. Because here, to my point of view, Russian business has to do a lot. Something that you, being a Russian business, you have to be in favor for Germany. Germany likes you, but you need to improve this impression. And my vision is we are together, Russia and Germany, other countries. We are now coping with the first crisis, this first stage of crisis. Coronavirus, healthcare. Of course, we have risk groups, including in both Russia and Germany, and their mortality rate in Russia and in Germany is low. It's a great bonus to show that we dealt with it in comparison with other countries where it's a catastrophe. But now we are moving forward to the second and the third stage of this crisis. Number two, social sphere and economic losses, which we have to deal with. And of course, there are many areas for cooperation. I will not repeat all the ordinary things. You and other participants were telling that globalization is just about to end in the form which we knew during the last 70 years, because it's protectionism and regionalization of the markets. It's a great chance. To what extent? We in European environment feel that we have thunderstorm coming to us and we cannot cope with it. There will be no war. There will be great dispute between the US and China. How to build new world order of globalization and global economy. Europe and Russia are somewhere in between of these two superpowers that will dispute about everything. The US will try to persuade Europe and China will try to persuade China. There will be sanctions against China, against Russia, against European Union. This is what I mean when I'm talking about thunderstorm, which is close, approaching us. At the same time, we have historical milestone and an opportunity. So Eurasian Economic Union, which is led by Russia, if I may say so, and European Union, led by Germany, could finally come to any common conclusion and become strategic partners. Why? Of course, because Europe will redeploy its production sites from Asia back to Europe to become more independent from these markets. And at the same time, I believe that it will be not a problem for Europeans if it is possible to replace Asia with Eurasian manufacturers and infrastructure because it's already built during the recent years. This is the first thing we shall pay attention to, its historical chance. Everything I described, we are very close. And of course, environmental cooperation. It's an issue of cooperation. Will there be clean, decarbonized environment? And will there be other sources than oil and coal, etc. I hope that it will happen by 2050. Europe will have fresh and clean air, and only renewable sources will be applied. Huge investment will be in this sphere, but there is a question mark for Russia and Russian companies, Russian entrepreneurs, from the point of view of communication, from the point of view of atmosphere. It's very important to join this process using your technological basis, which exists in Russia, in designing of joint technological product, not like it was in the past. Russia will purchase technology in Europe and take it to Russia and sell raw materials. No, it will be otherwise, on the other level. And I would repeat once again, I hope that today we will not mention Skolkovo and other bases. There is opportunity to participate in that with high tech. Russia, especially in the sphere of carbon industry, is ahead of other countries. We need to join this process. It will allow us to get closer to Germany, to find common language on new basics which are not political. I believe it's very important to join the Green Deal and to realize that we can build common green space together and digitalization. Of course, there is joint technological project and the SMEs, medium-sized business is very important because modernization of Russia, from my point of view, depends not only on large public companies, but medium-sized businesses. Germany offers strategic cooperation for Russian enterprises, SMEs. This is our recommendation, probably recommendation of our council. Please, you have to make the first steps. You need to support associations, so we shall speak common language to lobby, to promote this future of modernization of our economies. Thank you. Thank you very much for being so sincere and a good share of optimism. We will focus on that. And on my behalf and on behalf of my colleague from Moscow, I can say that here you have strong, reliable partners because everything that you have mentioned is very close to us. It's a very good introduction to give the floor to our next speaker, Mr. Yerger. Please take the floor. Everybody knows that success of Germany is related not only with large-scale companies, or not to this extent of global companies. First of all, it's based on the high efficiency of medium-sized businesses. Russia, unfortunately, cannot achieve such share of strong entrepreneurship in this SME sphere and such impact on economic processes. My colleagues, partners, experts will say that Germany is a very strong example in this sphere. One of the presentation of the associations which you present, there was a phrase which I liked very much. I will read it. In one of the presentations, it was said that Germany is called the country of quiet stars, so-called hidden champions, who are leaders in their market niches. Is it so? And I am proud to declare that in Russia, there are some leaders, some hidden champions, smaller than in Germany, but nevertheless. And my question is, in this sphere, we are partners or competitors? And something that Alexander was telling about, is it possible to establish strategic partnership on the level of associations, which you, for example, represent, which me and my Moscow colleague and friend represent? What is your opinion about that? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for this very good question. First of all, I believe that competition is important because competition brings innovation. Even in Germany, companies do compete in the local market. And probably one of the reasons that innovation and quality of the products made in Germany a really important trademark. But I also believe that there is a big potential between the Russian and the German SMEs to continue cooperation and to increase cooperation. Rather than only thinking about the competition, we should complete each other. We should build bridges and not walls, because bridges allow cooperation, innovation, market access together, and market partnerships. And you see, that made Germany an export champion. You asked about the SMEs that are hidden champions. We have about 2,700 hidden champions in the world, and it's true that more than half come from Germany. Probably it's the idea that once you have a product, you want to make it better and better and better, and you have a competitor next door in Germany that does the same. So it pushes the envelope always forward. Now 3.5 million SMEs are in Germany, which represent 99% of all the German companies. And they are important because 50% of the GDP and 70% of education and the workers are employed by the SMEs, and 70% of innovation and patents are created. Now, Russia has also an amazing technology, and I call them always the real rocket scientists. You have amazing groups like Kaspersky, Yandex, Rosnano, and many others. And you do also cooperate already with your innovation clusters of Skolkovo and others with German industry. So what we have created is a platform at UNICON, St. Petersburg University of Economics, to inspire students and an exchange of information, of innovation, market access, to complete and complete our mission to become better for the benefit of all countries, not only Russia and Germany. And I fully agree with my speaker before that the world changes and that we are looking to more integrate production and cooperation on a European continent to avoid in periods like COVID now, risk that we have in supply chain. I also promised Anton Kurbiakov of SPIV that we would work closer. And we are planning for 2021 to open a German SME pavilion to bring more German SMEs to Russia, to meet people and to facilitate the market access for them and the exchange also vice versa in a win-win situation that more Russian companies can enter the German or European markets. Our association unites some 900,000 people. We are companies, sorry, not people, companies. We have offices in 60 countries and 300 local offices in Germany. So we are, I think, a very good market access for your country into the German marketplace. And rest assured, we will be happy to assist, be present, and further the economic exchange for the advantage of everyone, for both the German producers, the Russian producers. Even if we compete sometimes, I think ultimately it will make us better and bring better products and more markets also to the Germans and to Russia. Be well, be healthy, especially in this period of time, and please contact us anytime you need our assistance. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Спасибо огромное. Надеюсь,
Thank you very much.
I hope that in a few inner proms we will be able to speak about the results. And we will even try to think of how we started the communication hour platform at a very difficult time. Anton, I will pass the floor to our studio in Moscow. Now we take the microphone in Moscow. Moscow is the third room. And from the third room, we address our question to the first room, which would be the first and the main one. And in Italy, we have a very important participant, Mr. Carlo Ferro, who is heading the DG, the Italian trade agency. Mr. Ferro, I would like to welcome you. Italy was supposed to become the partner country for INNOPROM 2020. Unfortunately, INNOPROM was postponed. If not for this, we would be able to talk to each other in Ekaterinburg. But we are very grateful to you that you found the time to take part in our online conference. And of course, we're interested to know your opinion, your comments on how seriously this crisis affected industry in Italy and in the world. What we're supposed to do now, what steps the Italian business is going to undertake, including the operation in the external markets. We would like to give the floor to you, Mr. Carlo Ferro.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the invitation. And even by web, it's a pleasure of meeting all of you. And I want first to take the opportunity to express my high gratitude to the government of the Russian Federation, to the Deputy Minister, for having offered Italy the opportunity of being the partner country at INNOPROM 2021. We postponed by 1 year, but I'm sure it will be equally a very important event, and our commitment to bring the best of the leading edge of the Italian technology remains unchanged. Even more, will be an opportunity of accompanying with this event the recovery. And then it's about recovery, which means that is after a crisis. A crisis has the negative of what's happening, but also the opportunities of being a time for change and for repositioning business relationships and enterprises. To answer your question, Mr. Atraskin, certainly at the end, I have to say that the Italian economy is not immune from the world trade slowdown, from all the bottleneck in the global value chains, the fall of the consumption due to the COVID-19, but perhaps being among the first countries that have been affected is already among the first, which is recovering industrial production and commercial activities. Certainly, the closure during the lockdown period of manufacturing activities has affected the export and the export companies. To share data, those operations that have been closed during the lockdown period generate 66% of the total export. And this is important, as you know, that at the end in Italy, about 1/3 of the GDP is based on export, and about another 13% is based on tourism. So we are really now very much committed about the recovery. Tough, we believe that the export for the full year 2020 may decline in a range by 12%, which means at the end having a second half of the year starting with some recovery, and moreover we look at a solid and about 7 to 8% recovery already in 2021. And here we see in the data some positive sign that shows some recovery. For instance, just a few days ago, I received the data on the business confidence in the month of June, which indicates a sign of recovery for the business, an increase from an index of 63 to an index of 65, from household an increase from 94 to 101. Then there are signs of some increase in production month after month. In the month of May, the production, industrial production has been higher by 31.4% than the month of April. Consumption started to recover, a 12% increase in May versus April. And then at the end, we believe that we tend to be optimistic about the recovery of the overall business climate in the world. It's certainly, maybe a few months ago, we may have said that this is going to be similar to the SARS in 2000 and in the prior years, which recovered with a sort of V shape. We don't have in front of us, frankly, V. We have in front of us a U shape. Is a U shape, perhaps even not perfectly symmetric, a bit asymmetric with a slower recovery. But what I believe is very important is that at the end, if there would not be other disruptive event from the pandemic, this U may go through its own way on a smooth way. What instead could be very dangerous could be to have another cyclical effect with another spike of the pandemic. And for this reason, as you know, in Italy, all activities have recovered, but people continue to be very, very careful and in keeping the social distance. And this is also an opportunity for our industry and the way that also we support the trade relationship with foreign partners, and we very much care about the partners in Russia, certainly, is on using more the digital tools and the digital media for communication, for event, for ensuring the opportunities that through digital, not only companies could capture earlier the opportunity of the ongoing recovery, but really could position into a model which I believe it will be the one of what we can call a new normality. And in this new normality, what is still really changing is an incredible acceleration towards the digital. We are working with the government, which launched a very massive plan of partnership with all the industrial federation to relaunch the export, which is really called the Patto per l'Export. And as a part of that, we are working on the digital training of export managers, on the e-commerce, on the digitalization of the fair, B2B platform for a business relationship with partners like you and those in your country, and the development for the startup, and a lot on the e-commerce. On the e-commerce, really what we are doing is creating some important platform of virtual windows of made in Italy product with partners in the e-commerce worldwide, and we target 59 different partnerships. You could figure out that we're a couple a few years, 1 year and a half ago, and what we target is a significant extension. We believe that at the end, through this recovery, the Italian companies, which you know is very much characterized by SMEs, that all these SMEs will be more prepared in the business relationship and partnership on digital tools with foreign partners.
Grazie. Grazie, Mr. Ferro. Thank you very much. I hope to see you in Innoprom Екатеринбург 2021. Спасибо, господин Ферро. Я сказал, что надеемся увидеть его в Екатеринбурге.
Thank you, Mr. Ferro. I said we hope to see him in Ekaterinburg in 2021. And from wonderful Rome, we will travel to Paris, which is not less wonderful. And for our trade minister of the Russian Federation in France, Mr. Makarov, I would like to welcome you. I know that today there was a forum, the French-Russian Forum, in the framework of our online marathon. Thank you for being able to be present there. And I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Suren Vardanyan. So good afternoon. Happy to see you once again. And I would like to sincerely thank you for your participation in our events, for providing support in communication between the French and Russian companies. So thank you very much, Mr. Vardanyan. I would like to send my best regards from Paris. And first of all, I would like to see all of you. Unfortunately, I cannot give you a hug, but I would love to. You know, I've been watching marathon from 10 o'clock. I can't imagine how complex this event is from technological point of view, taking into account that we have online meetings and our colleagues are waiting for us. We have other online meetings planned. And in order not to be able to waste the time, I would like to introduce two speakers here in France. And I know that Mr. Vardanyan has his own question to the speakers. And we'll go to another online session to say goodbye to other colleagues. Okay, agreed. I think that this is really very logical. I wanted to ask the question to Mr. Moore. Renault in Russia is one of the key players in automotive market, and Renault started not to promote the products, but started localization of production. And you started the promotion in European market as well as in Russia. Once you are so successful, once we have such close cooperation, what would be an obstacle that would prevent Russia from taking one of the leading positions in automotive industry? What do you think that Russia should do for the cars that are produced in Russia to be well received and recognized in the other market? What this car is missing from your point of view?
Yeah, so hello to everyone. Good afternoon. As you know, can you hear me? Yeah. So as you know, Renault is present in Russia with two companies. There is Renault Russia, which is operating in a former Moskvich plant in Moscow, and we have Avtovaz, where we are the main shareholders together with Rostec. And Avtovaz is manufacturing Lada cars. So Lada used to be a major exporter of cars during the previous times, some decades ago. Today, Lada is still exporting about 10% of its production, and Renault Russia too. So in order to promote the Russian-made products abroad, first of all, we have to overcome the logistics penalties because it is quite expensive to ship cars from Russia to export markets. And in this, I really welcome the support we get from the Russian Export Center, which is highly welcome. Then in terms of technologies, which is maybe the question behind, so same as my German and Italian colleagues, we do recognize the very high skills of the Russian engineers, and we are more and more localizing engineering activities in Russia, including electronics. We also have good cooperation with some high-tech partners like Yandex, which was mentioned. So I believe that if we can manage to embark more, let's say, high-tech technologies, this would also be very valuable for the export of cars made in Russia. Bon, nevertheless, at the moment, the key issue is really to have enough competitiveness for complete cars, but also for parts, because more and more we are also exporting parts from Russian suppliers or Russian plants abroad in the various technologies. So I would say since we signed a special investment contract with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, we have a roadmap to double the exports from now until 2025. And I'm quite confident that we will manage to do it.
Николя, thank you. Еще один вопрос в продолжении.
Thank you, Nicola. One more question in continuation. So the entire world, and it was already mentioned by the German colleagues, that more and more in automotive industry, we switch to alternative sources of energy. What is your opinion? What should Russia do? Whether we should stick to traditional sources of energy or we should change the situation?
Well, as you may know, the whole market will move to full electric vehicles in the next, let's say, 20 or 30 years. Some countries would like to anticipate this to 2030, some others to 2040. Nevertheless, we have to look at the complete energy generation chain. And it would not make sense to push too much for electric cars too early in Russia, while the electricity generation is not green enough, let's put it this way, or affordable enough. So what we see, at least in the Renault Group, is that there would be an interesting transition using CNG, so natural gas engines, for a period of time before increasing the share of full electric vehicles significantly. So probably about 10 to 15 years with CNG and then switching to EV. Nevertheless, of course, we also see some opportunities for EV in the short term, especially in the larger cities like Moscow. And we are ready to discuss this with the Moscow government and other cities to introduce electric cars, especially for fleets or car sharing activities, that type of thing. But massive development of electric cars in Russia for us will happen beyond 2030.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Николя. Спасибо большое, Николя, за ваш ответ. Mikhail,
much, Nicola, for your answer. I would like to ask, I remember that just recently you had your forum in France. What are the results of this forum? What is your perception of this? You know, I have the feeling that, as usual, on one hand, as I have already mentioned, we need to change the spheres and transfer from one thing to another, but we see certain trends which have been discussed from early morning today, and these trends and these stories are penetrated with some kind of high fashion directions that are being pronounced now. This would be digitalization, the artificial intellect, and the Internet of Things, and the cybersecurity that was spoken about by Mr. Kaspersky during our strategic session. I may repeat these things, but there could be several trends which I could consider to be very important. It would be the energy efficiency and the composite materials. I really like this session today and the presentation by my colleague from Severstal. I heard many things which I wanted to hear. Thank you. You've almost answered my next question. I wanted to ask you about the directions for technological cooperation between Russia and France. And I almost heard the answers to my question, because those sessions that we have already had are not limited with what you have said today. You know, I may repeat, but along with traditional branches of industry, I've been talking to my colleagues about this. It would be aerospace, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, automotive, nuclear industry, of course, and agriculture. It would be important to say that Russia and France have vertical connections, and the synergy that is related to all of these spheres, starting with agriculture, ending up with cybersecurity and Internet of Things and artificial intelligence. That is why it's very important for us to support these activities, and special emphasis should be made on support of education and educational institutions between our countries. And who would be your other guest? I think that Mr. Tama is your guest as well. I would like to give the floor to Jean-Pierre Tama. This is our legend, a legend from the point of view of development of the Russian and French relationships, and he's the founder of the foundation of the same name, and at the times of Nicolas Sarkozy, he was the representative of cooperation of Russia and France in the Council of Cooperation between France and Russia. It's nice to see you during this session. Thank you for finding the time. Thank you for taking the opportunity of taking part in this discussion. And thank you for being the founder of this fund. And we have the question to you. What is your vision of recovery of global industry after this rapid decrease that happened in the beginning of this year? And how important you consider this cooperation between Russia and France?
Yes, so thank you very much for invitation to this very interesting international forum. I understand your question in the light of all the interventions before. But I know, you know, this crisis, we are out of the crisis. We don't even really know if we don't have, unfortunately, a jump and W or not a recovery. But globally, after a crisis, I think we have to take and to grasp all opportunities. And first of all, you know, from the point of view of Russia, that's true that now Russia has to push its economy on new sectors of diversification, which Russia started to do, of course, to agriculture and so on. But, you know, now in terms of logistics, now the people during the crisis, even myself, I think the member of this forum, you know, we more order and order by internet. And I know that in Russia, you have a good logistic capacity, and especially on the Eurasian way, so China, from Russia, it's very easy to transport a lot of products produced by Russian company, produced by European company, which invested and produced in Russia. And some of them now understood it, go in Russia to be able to, of course, to sell on the Russian market, but to export to China. So all this logistic, I know that in Russia, you are in advance. So I think we have to push in this sector. You can push, just modest advice. You can push on, of course, e-economy. I know I met some of boss and creators of companies in Russia in this sector of e-economy, you know, selling. It's not the monopoly US, American, or Chinese. We have to exist, and Russia has, for many reasons, with Europe, which doesn't exist enough on it, we have to exist, and Russia has to exist on this point, and I know that Russia has the capacity to do it. And on specific opportunities, just speaking for opportunities quickly, about this crisis itself, you know, you were better than us on the production of quicker of masks, this famous mask, and on the famous test. I spent my quarantine in Russia 3 months, so I know exactly how it was working. Contrary, you know, the media of the West was saying the country, but it was not true, because in Russia we had tests and we had masks. So now your industry shows its capacity, and now I know that you have a special company or two, or the one two, which are able to export. In Europe, we can cooperate between France and Europe, not to find ourselves in the same situation. So it's just few examples, of course, in addition with the classic one, energy, efficient of energy, agriculture, and so on. But, you know, you don't wait for me to know. But to develop this way, of course, we need to stop the sanctions. Because, you know, it's very funny, because we always speak about friendship in the forum, cooperation, but the same one who come here to tell you, I am your friend, we will cooperate, you know, they raise their hand in Brussels to continue renew the sanctions, which we did a few days before the 75th anniversary of the Second World War. So I think if we can avoid of the European part to reconduct automatically these sanctions after this crisis, when everybody is suffering a lot, with a lot of unemployment in Europe, and especially of France, it will be a nightmare to employment. And, you know, to cooperate like France, and not to follow, you know, these silly, useless sanctions, like I many said in the last year. It was not positive for many reasons for me, but I say what I think. So, you know, it's very important to recreate a frame of friendship and cooperation, not this sort of business civil war, which is not adequate through and after such a crisis. And that's very important, because we have to play the card from Europe. Now I come from the sense of from France. We have to play the card of the exchange Eurasia. That is our partner, natural partner, of course. We have a good partner with the United States, the first economy in the world. But we have to balance in a good strategy, and to have Russia like partner through the Eurasian and go to China. Russia is a bridge to Asia and China, and the growth and the future is there, and everybody knows it. So this strategy, I made a book at that time with Sarkozy, President Medvedev, and President Putin about the building of Euro-Eurasian free economic zone. But now it's a target. It's more difficult now, but we have to do that, because on the European side, we have to continue to invest. A lot of French company does. When you know better than me that when you are in Russia, you see Auchan, you see now Savencia for the dairy and cheese, we have Schneider Electric, a long list. But the point is that we have to continue, and Renault to continue to invest in Russia. But we have to I think, to build a confidence ambiance more than it is.
Спасибо большое, господин Томас, за ваш комментарий.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toma, for your comment, for such frank comment from the point of view of organization of cooperation between Russia and Europe and in general. And thank you for your standpoint about the need to take into consideration the mutual interests and not to look at the perspectives from the point of view of particular interests, and to protect cooperation because we're in the global market.
Providing technological breakthrough of all our countries together. Thank you very much for that. Anton, please take the floor. Thank you, Monsieur Toma. Mikhail, thank you very much. And we are living in Europe. We are crossing the Atlantic Ocean, and we travel to South America. In Lima, the capital of Peru, we have Oleg Gorov, trade representative of Russia in Peru. Please, Andrei Besedin, ask your question to Oleg Gorov and his guest. I'm doing it with a great pleasure, and I would like to share. Probably I am not the only one who is impressed by the scale of Innoprome. Being a resident of Yekaterinburg, who got accustomed to welcome the guests. Every year we have more and more pavilions of this trade fair, and I was really concerned for missing this opportunity to communicate. And now I really admire what's happening, trying to realize to which extent we managed to maintain the achieved level during the years of INNOPROM development. We started our marathon when in Lima, in Peru, it was middle of the night. And now we have a great opportunity to break all the borders, all the frontiers, to cross the oceans and to talk about what's interesting for both us and our audience. Oleg, please. It's traditional second part of our today's marathon, and I have to ask you to introduce the guest who is next to you in this studio, who will talk about Russia, the relations between Russia and Peru. Please introduce your guest. And a question for start. Traditional question to both of you. How Peru accepted and coped with this crisis, how it was hit by the pandemic, how, to which extent the country was prepared, how it could counteract. Just very brief answers, because for each of you I have some other more detailed questions. Oleg, please take the floor. Good evening, Mr. Besedin, dear colleagues, dear moderators, Moscow, good morning, Peru, Lima. We are here in Lima from our studio, organized in the trade mission of Russia and Peru, and I would like to introduce my guest, Senor Ricardo Marquez Flores, President of the National Union of Industry in Peru. He's the head of this union for the second time. He was the president of the National Commission on Promotion of Export in Peru, director of National Center on Promotion of SMEs, and also he was the first and the second vice president of the country under the Alberto Fujimori presidency. Answering your question, can I answer the question first? Yes, of course. Under the pandemic, it was an emergency regime in Peru. About 60% of the enterprises had to stop their activities. In April, a number of anti-records was set. The decrease of import was 40% and decrease of import was 56%. And the total decrease of export was 26%. The government took a number of measures to minimize the negative consequences of this situation. In particular, the Central Reserve Bank of Peru decreased the interest rate to 0.5%. About 70 billion US dollars were allocated for support and providing loans to the enterprises. The government started the program to increase and improve infrastructure, allocating 2 billion US dollars for that, which estimates about 1 million of jobs to families who lost their income, have the social payments by the government. Since May, the recovery is taking place divided by 4 stages, depending on economic sector. Since the 1st of July, the emergency mode was not continued, but the sanitary epidemiological regime was prolongated till September. It's not a lockdown, but it's more about the health care and social insurance system, custom procedures and sanitary protocol requirements. According to the evaluations, economic decrease can end by the third quarter of this year, and by the end of the year, GDP can decrease by 12% and general export by 12 to 18%. And the same forecasts say that in the beginning of 2021, the economy of Peru will have very high rates of growth thanks to fiscal policy and a low level of state debt, which is 17% of GDP. Thank you very much. And the same question to our guests. Mr. Flores, please just briefly tell us about your expert opinion on what's happening today in Peru, taking into account the new challenges.
Thank you very much for this invitation. As Oleg Gorlov has mentioned to you, those are the numbers that we have in our economy. And I would like to refer to the fact that even though we had a very difficult times in the last 4 months, we still have our economy as one of the second best economy in South America, because we have been for the last 30 years a very conservative economy in terms of maintaining a good macroeconomics. But let me refer to you to what I see in terms of what I have listened from Mr. Alexander Rad, referring to the fact that the small and medium industries are the ones that are to take now a big challenge, not only in Europe, but all over the world, and especially in our country, because this is the jobs that we need to help out. Okay, the percentage of PBI or gross national product of the small and medium business is much more in Europe than in Latin America. And that is an objective for us as a country. But also, I would like to say that we are trying to make business with countries that give us the opportunity to create some part of those machineries that we want to buy, especially for the mining company, because we have a huge mining companies here in Peru, especially in copper, and also in lithium, which is the basics for the electric cars that you guys will expect in the next 10 years. Because I see that you talk about 2030, but you are forgetting about the Chinese, you know? And this is something which you have to take into consideration. I mean, you're gonna be pushed by the Chinese competition, okay? I see that also. The main thing is to see the new type of business partnership that we can have, because all over the world, we're looking for jobs. And if I can go, for example, to Russia and give me a whole project for a mining exploration and development, and they tell me that half of those machinery are going to be made in Russia and half in Peru, I will go for that, because everybody is trying to do that. And you know that India does that very, very often. So when I was in Europe and I talked to the people there, they told me that they could do that. And so now, after what happened with this pandemic, these are the things that we have to look for, okay? and especially in terms of interchange, because in Latin America, we have the Alliance of the Pacific, which is Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Chile, which is one of the best groups of economies that are open, free market. Okay, that especially you don't have any restrictions to do business and to send your money back and forth. And so far, especially our working together between the private business is that we are working and hoping to make that this Alliance of the Pacific to be a good partner for our European partners and also our Russian partners. Okay, thank you very much.
Спасибо огромное.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to both speakers for their answers and some probably more detailed questions to both of you. Mr. Gorlov, since I'm in Yekaterinburg, the capital of the region of metallurgy, which was founded as metallurgical region, it would be a pleasure to me to mention for Mr. Flores that in our region we have the leading companies of Russia in terms of producing gold and copper. More than 300 years ago, the first gold in Russia was found here in the Sverdlovsk region, 30 kilometers from the studio where I am right now. And such companies, which seriously influence economy of the region, always monitor their colleagues, first of all, in the South America continent. We see that the situation was very serious and the mining industry was hit seriously in April based on the sources which are published in Russia, economic statistics. Only in April, the decline in mining industry was more than 40% decrease. And on this background, the government continued the emergency situation till August. Oleg, please, couple of words, because our audience is interested in understanding the situation in such a country, which is a leader in this mining industry. What's happening today? What are the perspectives and your expert opinion, how it can impact on the global market of the segment which both Peru and the Sverdlovsk region present? Thank you. Mr. Besedin, you are absolutely right. Copper and gold are the key export products of Peru, with a share about 43% of the total export volume. And of course, the companies, just like other companies in the country, had to stop their operation in April, which led to the decrease. And on the results of 5 months, copper exports decreased by 30% and gold by 20%. But after the measures taken, you said that the emergency situation regime is continued. No, it's sanitary and epidemiological situation, and the ministries say that by the end of this month, the production rate will be 100%. Answering your question, I will say that the recovery will be very fast, but Russian companies could start cooperation with Peru in this sphere, taking into account the fact that Peru is open for investment. And here, largest enterprises from Canada, USA, Mexico, Switzerland, Australia, Great Britain are producing metals. And at the moment, we have lack of investment. And it's a very good moment for Russian companies, for large Russian players to enter the market of Peru, not only of copper and gold, but also silver and zinc and other minerals and metals. Peru is very rich from the point of view of mining sector. I would say that the potential interest sphere is chemical industry, is food product industry, transport infrastructure, metallurgy, consumer sector, agriculture, energy sector, and of course, healthcare. One of the forms of cooperation could be industrial cooperation or placement of Russian production facilities on the territory of Peru. We are willing to cooperate with the National Union of Industry of Peru, and Ricardo Marques Flores is the head of this union. Thank you very much. And on my behalf, I could say that for me, it's a great luck and it's a great honor to interview Mr. Flores, because I have visited Peru. And on behalf of my colleagues and on behalf of the residents of Peru, I heard a lot of positive feedback about the period when Mr. Flores, you were working as a public officer, and about this part of history of Peruvian economy. I have a question to continue what Oleg was talking about and you mentioned in your presentation. You probably inspired me to ask you the following question. Lima is waking up. It was night, middle of the night. We had a big strategic session within the INAPROM, and 2 summaries were made that globalization is inevitable and digitalization is inevitable. And the question is, it's always a conflict between increasing the jobs or maintaining the number of jobs, or to apply digital technologies, because we understand that all the measures aimed at increasing labor productivity at certain level lead to the cut of jobs. And on this background, we have another example of where our countries could also cooperate. We have information that mining companies in Peru are actively involved in digitalization, including in partnership with Russian developers of new technologies. Maybe I'm mistaken in correct pronunciation. The company Kasapi Mineria introduced Russian system of mining management, mining production management. It's a very positive step, which is an example for other manufacturers, developers of digital technologies and automation of management and control, including in mining. Mr. Flores, the question is, taking into account the fact that the governmental policy is interested in maintaining and increasing number of jobs, but on the other side, it's inevitable that we all are involved in digitalization. What is your opinion about that as a person who was managing the strategy of development of the country? Is digitalization for Peru, is it a need? Is it a requirement? The positive steps are made, and how the perspective of partnership of manufacturers in Peru and Russian IT companies? What is your opinion about that?
Well, basically, we have a very big light industries, and in light industries, you understand that the process of going into digitalization has to be made by the private sector and the government in terms of reconversion of our people. And at this very moment, we are working with the government in terms of labor reconversion through digital implementation of our companies. Of course, this is something which I would lie if I would say that everybody's doing it, but we are going to that direction. And we have an institution which is like in Germany, the dual system, which we have 100,000 students and workers in the same company. And this we have for about 50 years. And this is the industry in Peru. And that's why we feel confident that the transformation into the digitalization of companies, we can do it. And in the next couple of years or few years, we will do it, because as you know, everybody now is into digitalization. I used to live in Munich for 10 years, and I say to my friends, what happened in Germany is beginning here, very, very fast. 70%, 80% of the people are going to be in e-commerce. Our e-commerce must be right now something like 20 to 30%. But 3 months ago was 10%. So the changes are coming so quickly that I really don't know how fast we're going to catch up with this digitalization, because this is something which I know I have lived this in Europe, and here people are very sharp in terms of doing this digitalization. So my hope is that in a couple of years, we will be maybe 40, 50%, which is going to be a huge change for Latin America, because the whole perspective of investment is going to change. For example, we had huge malls here in Peru. Believe me, bigger than once in Munich. And I always say, this is not the way, because the way is commerce. And for example, these investors had a project to set up 10 more malls. But now that the malls are empty because people are afraid, well, I don't know, it's going to be changing the whole investment, you know, and this is the way that the whole world is going. The investment is going to go as to how this pandemic has hit every country, you see? And we have to be very quickly to see which way we go to create jobs. We have many different sectors that we have to prioritize. No? In other words, for example, right now we are working on different companies to export fishery to the United States. Why? Because American companies used to do that in China. After this pandemic, they don't want to do it in China. They want to do it in Peru. So we have a processing of food for Peru, for the whole coast, to have this new industry of processing products that Alaska used to do in China, and we're going to do it now. So we have to be very sharp in terms of what to do, what the Americas are changing. They don't want food processing in China. They want now to change, not only in the food processing, in different industries. I'm sure like in the medicine business, it's also another sector, because the Americans import 95% of their medicine from China. and this cannot be, or also in terms of you guys, the Americans make their parts for rockets in China, and this is crazy. But that's what's happening right now. So the whole perspective in terms of how you are moving the industries, you have to be very sharp in terms of what can I do, and especially the Americans also are investing in taking out the companies out of China. And in the way we see it, we study what we can do, okay? And this is the way we see it to create jobs. Thank you.
Спасибо вам, спасибо, Олег Сергеевич, господин Флорес, спасибо.
Thank you, Oleg. Thank you, Mr. Flores, for detailed answers to questions which are not very simple. But this is the advantage of the INNOPROM platform, when one can discuss everything which could be the interest for our audience, regardless of distances, countries, time zones. Thank you very much. Anton, I return the floor back to Moscow. Thank you, Mr. Besedin. We have a very important country in the South American region. This is one of the favorite trade partners for Russia, and we go to Trade Representative Office of Russian Federation in Argentina, and we have Sergei Derkach, who is a trade representative of the Russian Federation in Argentina. Hello, and Andrei Andolfovich, we give floor to you. Your turn to ask questions to Argentina, to the other part of the world. It's a wonderful opportunity, but once again, I would like to say that how lucky I am being a co-moderator. I have two favorite countries in South America. It would be Peru, which was the first country. I spent 3 weeks there with great interest, and Argentina, which was my final country in Latin America. I visited it the year before last year, and I never thought that I would be given a chance to moderate such external economy dialogue with representatives of these countries. We have a very positive atmosphere, but nevertheless, we are working for the audience who has professional interests. We are working for the participants of external economy activities, and unfortunately, I have to ask a question which would probably not be the celebrative type question, but I would say that Argentina is the country of great opportunities. Opportunities as a country, and opportunities from the point of view of partnership. And we and the colleagues are concerned about the economic shocks in Argentina and the economic crisis which is going on. That is why here comes a question. Speaking about the interests of our exporters, I would like you to give the answer to the following question. What challenges the exporters face in such difficult financial situation when we hear such words as default, and what potential risks they may face? Because in spite of all this, we see the interest in Argentina. Please, your expert opinion, if possible. So good evening, dear colleagues and the organizers of this wonderful event. I see that only the real marathon runners were able to achieve the very end of the marathon and managed to reach Buenos Aires, and I am happy to welcome you here, to wish you such health condition for further marathons, especially in such conditions as the pandemic, which is a very painful story for our activity. But those means of communications that we have nowadays allow us keeping the communication in spite of isolation or quarantine and exchange their opinions about the existing situation. Argentina is a very interesting country. Even though for our exporters, it's not a simple country because Argentina's largest trade partners would be the neighboring countries such as Brazil, $20 billion of turnover, China, $16 billion, US, $10 billion, Germany, $3.7 billion, and Chile, which is a neighboring country, is $3.5 billion. Once there are such large trade partners, it is very difficult for our companies to compete with these partners in Argentina's market. And speaking of the today's situation, having the economic drop, which is related not only to pandemic just made it stronger, but it makes it difficult to approach this Argentina's market for the Russian side. And we will tell you about this together with my guest, with Shinka Rokas, who is one of the founders of large companies such as Tipu. This is a consultancy company, and he's the member of the Business Council for Argentina and Russia. And since 2016 till 2019, he was occupying a very important position because he was heading the Secretariat on External Trade in the ministry. And being the head of this Secretariat, he was taking part in bilateral conversation and multilateral negotiations. And when there was the WTO conference, he was co-chairing the conference. He was taking part in negotiations between Mercosur and EC and European Union. And he's very experienced person in external trade. Speaking of the second part of the question, which is related to the challenges existing for our exporters, I would say that the crisis in debts and in commitments is a very difficult situation. Argentina is trying to regulate this issue, trying to influence this issue, and speaking about the size of this debt, it's $320 billion. It's a very complex debt. These are the commitments before the foreign creditors. There is the internal debt between the government and the central bank. Also, there is the debt for the International Monetary Fund. The situation is not very simple, and of course, it lays an imprint on operation of in the market of Argentina. And in this respect, in the first one, I would like to mention that here we have such currency and financial risks associated with access for the importers to currencies. As far as we've already faced the situation when we had the previous government, when the central bank or the government limited the access of importers to dollars and euros. And this procedure was established on special occasions. You were supposed to submit request to the central bank, then to get an approval. This procedure is no longer valid, but we cannot exclude the possibility that one day the government will undertake these measures. And also financial risks are present, and these risks are really substantial because of the fact that the situation of many companies is not very stable. The companies are experiencing financial difficulties. And that is why I would like to recommend that our exporters carry out this certain work when they think of kind of large-scale deals. They need to do the due diligence of the potential buyer or the partner. This could be done through the trade representation, but we do not have the access to this information on this regular basis. That is why you should come to special companies. We can recommend these companies who could provide you with the information on the situation of a certain company, of a certain Argentinian importer. Another thing I would like to mention is also another serious risk, which is associated with our banks. As a rule, for approaching the market of Argentina, especially with kind of technical and machinery products, there must be funding provided. And to what extent Russian banks, Rosseximbank, are ready to fund the deliverers, the supplies of the goods to Argentina's market, taking into consideration the fact that the external debt in a very complex situation is being regulated and is not finalized yet. This could also be a risk. Besides, the banks will require the insurance with XR, then you will have to come to an agreement with XR, you will have to agree on the price of this insurance. All these factors are related to the current financial and economic position of the country, situation in the country. And so my guest will tell you in greater details. And also the challenges that the Russian companies will face are related to some legal issues related to supplies of the products to Argentina's market. It has a relation to certification of products, licensing, because we have automatic licensing and non-automatic licensing. As for automatic licensing, it considers that you provide a certain package of documents and you will automatically be issued a license, though the term of validity of this license is reduced. It's now 90 days. It used to be 98 days. And take into consideration the time for transportation, you need to be able to fit in this time period of time. But non-automatic licensing means that there would be some corresponding Argentina's authorities that would consider this contract, and they will not issue the license automatically. And the list of goods that will not be automatically licensed changes from time to time. There could be some goods that will be added to this list or taken out of this list. Just as an example, I will tell you that on March the 20th, the import of oils, gasoline, and diesel fuel became one of activities which was not automatically licensed. But these are the major export products from Russia to Argentina. And of course, it may resulted on the volumes of our export to Argentina. This is what we see in the recent 5 months of this year. Based on the Russian customs statistics, we would say that our export reduced by 70%, and based on the results of Argentina's statistics, the reduction is 40%. These are the main issues that have to be taken into account when doing business with Argentina, and all other issues could be discussed in your discussion with the trade representation. Thank you very much. It's a very good information for our manufacturers, Mr. Rojas. And now I will proceed with the questions to you. And not to get stuck on such a pessimistic note, I will say about the achievements of Argentina. Even in such difficult times associated with economic crisis and effect from pandemic. Just recently, I read the information with great pleasure that just recently Argentina was included in the top 10 of leading countries with high indexes of renewables. Based on Ernst & Young scale, and I know that in Argentina, with the help of the World Bank, is planning to produce not less than 20% of own energy from renewables in 5 years. And the expert evaluation was really very interesting. They consider that this forecast is real in spite of the economic drops or any challenges because Argentina has such an interesting region as Patagonia with its winds, and I really didn't want to leave Patagonia because I was captured by this region. It's a fantastic place, and it gives potential for renewables, for using the renewables, also the issue of hydro energy and recycling of biomass. And here comes my question. Take into consideration all that Sergey already mentioned, and the fact that Argentina is the country where the partner countries are already prevailing, even though Russia is already in Argentina, but it will be very difficult for Russia to expand the partnership. What would be your professional vision? Is our partnership in this promising directions such as renewables, hydro energy, biomass recycling possible? And we would say that Russia has some developments, serious developments and experience in implementation of our own projects.
Thank you, Andrei. Thank you, Sergey. Thank you, Anton, for the invitation to participate in this prestigious forum. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Yeah, definitely. I think there are many opportunities for strengthening the cooperation between Russia and Argentina, particularly in the energy sector and the renewables energy sector. However, the macroeconomic conditions right now are critically important, and any viable project in the medium or long term needs to take into account the macroeconomic conditions of the country. So let me first give you a general overview of the economic situation in Argentina, and particularly the situation of the debt restructuring, and then I can move on into the opportunities that there might be in the renewable energy sector. First, let me give you a few key facts about the Argentine economy to give you a perspective. Argentina has a population of about 45 million people and a GDP of about $450 billion. Argentina is a G20 member, and after Brazil and Mexico is the third largest economy in Latin America. The country benefits from rich natural resources, a highly literate population, an export-oriented agricultural sector, and a relatively diversified industrial base. Argentina's economic performance has been historically quite uneven, with macroeconomic instability and the recessions alternating with high economic growth. In 2018, Argentina suffered a deep monetary crisis, which led to the sharp devaluation of the currency. And as a result of this, Argentina resorted to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which provided a historic record standby agreement of $50 billion to Argentina. Despite this assistance, Argentina did not manage to stabilize the economy, and in late 2019, last year, in the midst of a change in government, Argentina began a process of restructuring its external debt, which stands around $180 billion, of which $65 billion are in foreign currency and in foreign jurisdiction. Argentina has tried to avoid an open default on this debt. Although it is in technical default right now, the government continues to negotiate an agreement with private bondholders, which are mostly large investment funds, including BlackRock, Fidelity, and Allianz. Today, the process is in the final stage of the negotiation, and all indicates that an agreement is within reach. Until recently, the parties had polarized their positions, as it usually happens in very hard negotiations like this one, in an attempt to maximize the marginal gains, and the funds have threatened Argentina to take the issue to international courts. However, Argentina yesterday made a new and supposedly final offer, which has been received very positively by the financial markets. Actually, the shares of Argentine companies in the New York Stock Exchange rose up to 40% yesterday. Argentine bonds went up 12%, and the country risk issued by JP Morgan dropped from 2,500 points to 2,400 points, while in March, the country risk was 4,000 points. So this is a quite positive outlook for a scenario for the near future. The process of the renegotiation should end by the end of July or early August. And although the agreement seems to be the most probable result, of course, in the current global context of high instability and uncertainty, the process could get delayed and no outcome should be discarded. After concluding the negotiations with the private bondholders, Argentina will seek to restructure the debt payments with the IMF, which fall mostly in the next 3 years, from 2021 to 2024. The new managing director of the fund, Kristalina Georgieva, has been so far shown very strong support for Argentina's effort to restructure the debt. So in an optimistic scenario, Argentina could reach an agreement with the IMF by the end of this year and clear out the perspectives for the next few years. According to the most recent estimates, which of course need to be revised as the pandemic evolves, the Argentine economy is expected to fall this year around 10% or even 12 or 15%. This figure is similar to the regional average, which has been hardly hit by the pandemic, and is similar to the most advanced economies in the context of a global decline of about 5%, according to the most recent estimates of the IMF. Once Argentina clears out the doubts about the external debt with the private bondholders and the IMF, and assuming that the worst of the pandemic will be over towards the end of this year, Argentine economy could rebound next year, driven mostly by the domestic market and the agricultural exports, with an expected growth of about 5%. And this is quite significant in the region. On the political front, in 2021, there are congressional elections, which could be key for the current administration. For now, the population has been very supportive of the measures adopted by the President Fernandez to contain COVID-19. Since the early moments, Argentina applied deep and extended quarantines and social distancing measures. And despite the economic cost implied in the strategy, the population in general has approved this approach. So the government approval rates reach unprecedented levels, reaching about 50 to 60%. And while this is, there are still uncertainties and it is still early, the government political outlook for next year should be relatively positive if certain conditions are met. I think, yeah. Okay, yes, definitely. So in terms of challenges, I would say that basically we can identify challenges in inflation, poverty, and unemployment as everywhere because of the pandemic. And I think that there are many opportunities of cooperation and business development between Argentina and Russia, as I said, particularly in the areas of energy, infrastructure, technology, and agribusiness. It's important to note that the new administration has a natural political affinity with Russia, which should be leveraged. And also, importantly for this conference, the new government has recently announced that it will focus its foreign commercial policy on insertion of local SMEs and suppliers into global value chains based in Industry 4.0 and innovation, with a particular focus on natural resources, oil, mining, and agriculture. So in a complex regional context with 4 countries, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Peru, among the top 10 with the largest number of COVID cases in the world, once the macroeconomic outlook is cleared out, the Argentine landscape could provide a fertile ground for Russian companies interested in doing business in the region in the coming years. So now let me address the renewable energy opportunities in Argentina. As you know, as we mentioned before, Argentina has abundant renewable energy resources, steady winds in the south of Patagonia. Once a GE executive told me that the winds in Patagonia are strong enough to provide energy technology, allowing energy for the whole continent. So we are completely right about the opportunities in Patagonia. In the north of Argentina, the power of sun is also very strong, and there are opportunities in hydropower and biomass, fed by rivers and farmland across the country. Until very recently, only 2% of the country's electricity came from renewable energy. But in order to revert the situation, in 2016, Argentina launched an innovative program called Renovar, with the target of producing 20% of Argentine electricity from renewable energies by 2025, and 35% of the electric grid by 2030. Since then, Argentina government has awarded contracts for 6.5 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity, attracting nearly $7 billion in new investments in recent years. The program has been very successful. Today, 8% of the total electric energy is provided by renewable energy, 70% of which is by wind power, 15% mini hydro plants, 10% by solar power. By the end of 2021, the electricity provided by renewable energy should double. That is 16% of the electricity in the country. While this is a very solid base, the sector still faces some challenges ahead, particularly in light of the recent fall and instability in international oil prices. And in this regard, renewable energy projects should review the financial conditions very carefully. There is ample scope for growth in renewable energies in Argentina, particularly today in the solar energy sector. The German company Soventix has recently made an important investment announcement in Argentina. And in addition to these sources, one of the major bets of Argentine government is the development of the basin of Vaca Muerta, one of the largest reserves of shale gas in the world. And the government has also announced that it will be promoting energy infrastructure and distribution projects, as well as the further development of nuclear energy in Argentina. So I think that these are all areas where Russia has definitely comparative advantages, and there could be interesting opportunities for Russian companies in Argentina once the macroeconomic conditions are clear out. And as I mentioned in my exposition, I think that in the next few months, there are good chances of reaching an agreement with private bondholders and setting a good framework with the International Monetary Fund. Thank you very much.
Спасибо огромное. У нас, у россиян есть
Thank you very much. But Russians have a very interesting movie that the entire country loves, and the main character says, the last phrase is the one that people remember. And I want us, and I want the Russian and Argentinian meeting to be remembered with this last phrase, that nothing prevents us and everything facilitates our cooperation between such wonderful countries, and this cooperation should develop further. And I would like to thank both participants from Argentina. Anton, I would like to give the microphone back to you to Moscow. We are in Moscow, and our grand marathon is coming to its end. Our INNOPROM marathon that started early in the morning from Jakarta and Beijing. And we finish this evening in Argentina and Peru. I wanted to thank Andrei Sobolev, Mikhail Makarov, Oleg Gorlov, and of course, Sergei Derkach for your efforts in organizing the INNOPROM studio. And I would like to express gratitude to Suren Vardanyan and Andrei Besedin that together with us, you spent your whole day and you moderated this travel around the globe, which was not very simple, but knowing the routes and geography of Mr. Besedin's travels, our marathon has to catch up with you. But I'm really very thankful to you. We had about 30 events during this day at 5 online platforms. Those who didn't have enough time to watch something live, you can do it visiting our webpage. And if you have enough energy, I would like to ask Suren to say a couple of words in conclusion. And Mr. Besedin, as far as you have the best studio out of those that we have seen today, then you will conclude. Dear friends, I think I will reiterate what Mr. Besedin has said. Nothing prevents us from moving forward together. Nothing prevents us from developing our companies and economies of our countries. The only thing we need is to have the desire, and we should try to make moves towards each other. And I would like to wish that all of the participants of this marathon, I would like to wish you health in these difficult times, positive thinking, and I would like to wish the organizers of this marathon to repeat it, to expand it, and I want them to make it as productive as today, with soul contributed to it and with positive thinking looking in our life. Thank you. And I will continue the words of my friend and colleague. Today, I saw another important thing. We have the mutual desire. And this will be the trampoline for us to be able. It will become a springboard for us because we have the desire. If we don't, then we shouldn't discuss it. But all of these studios in the East, in Europe, in the West, we had different speakers from different spheres of businesses with different thinking and points of view. We had none of the speakers who said that they are not interested in cooperation. And this was probably the most important thing today. And this is the main achievement for these 8 hours of our marathon. I would also say that we have enough energy. If you want to travel around the globe 24 hours a day, we can arrange such an event, and we will concentrate our efforts. So, Anton, please generate, because InnoProm platform is priceless, and the day today demonstrated it. And I am really very happy and proud for the trust I've been given. I'm a bit sad that I was not able to see all of the events today. But fortunately, we have the digital technologies, and digital technologies allow us to catch up. That is why I would like to wish success to every participant in implementation of your plans, personal, corporate, national. And as the way we started our day with the governor from this studio, and he announced some pleasant things, that is why I would like to propose not to leave the InnoProm band, because today you will get some emotional surprise. See you next time. And Mr. Besedin is totally right. The cultural program of InnoProm is waiting for you. This is the place where you will see the favorite musicians. Always when we have the main receptions of InnoProm, we invite them and we have fun in Ekaterinburg till early morning. And today you will have this opportunity, though it will be an opportunity online, but you will have the opportunity. During 11 years of InnoProm, we gained a lot of friends, and we, having this InnoProm, we added new friends to our collection. And once again, thank you very much. Don't switch. And the InnoProm cultural program is waiting for you. Thank you, and success and health to all of you. Thank you.